Welcome back, guys. We're playing Mountain Blade 2, Bannerlord. We're in the middle of a campaign here, so this will actually be an episode about a little bit about the gems of crafting. So I'm not gonna go through everything about crafting. I'm gonna assume you know a bit about the basics. I'm just gonna show you some gems I found and some tricks which might be generally known, but I'm gonna emphasize them anyway. First of all, when you level crafting, anything you do in crafting gives experience, but some things gives more than other. For example, if you craft an item, say it sells for 5,000 dinars. Well, the higher the value of the item you craft, the higher the experience gain will be as well. And contrary to that as well, if you smelt the same amount, say that for example an item which is worth 5,007, if you instead smelt that, you will gain the double amount of experience which you gained from crafting it, especially if you have the perks which increases the chance of getting a research proc and such. So that's one of the basic things. Smelting items generates double the amount of crafting for the same item. So one thing I found is that the trees which are easily researched up to the higher tiers are polearms, but mainly actually two-handed axes. Those are really fast to level up to the highest tier because they don't have as many components as, for example, swords. They have a lot of components, so they take longer to research. So what I generally do is I try to go for a money maker either in two-handed or in polearm. One thing I noticed, which is a really good money maker if you choose to go down the two-handed tree, is if you manage to get up to rank 4 here and this pointed flashing blade, you can see the required materials. That's wrought iron and 3 of them. Wrought iron is almost the base item. So here you have a rank 3 blade, rank 4 blade, but it only requires wrought iron, which is like a tier 2 item. So this is a really good if you want to transform wrought iron into money. This is a very good recipe to gain, and you can actually craft a really good sword by only bringing tier 2 for the rest. So we're going a wrought iron, and there's a wrought iron pommel here as well. So only for wrought iron and crude iron. Now we don't have any crude iron, but that's easier to achieve. For only this, you can craft a sword, which is worth quite a bit. What I'm looking for when I'm doing my two-handers to increase the value even more is to make sure it's a one-handed and two-handed at the same time. That will increase the value of the item. Again, an increased value of the item is an increased experience gain. But you always want to make sure, if you want to micromanage, that you actually have the sweet spot when it comes to swing speed and cut damage. So for example here, I would actually make more of this blade if I place it there, because then I maximize my swing speed and cut damage. And you can pull on the levers here to see what gains you the most. But normally I just go full up because the difference isn't that big in terms of the changing of stats. But if you craft this one now, for example, and we quickly go out to the vendor, we will see. No, I probably have more expensive items there. For only 5 wrought iron and 1 crude iron and 1 piece of wood, we gain 10,000. And basically you can buy a very basic sword, just tempered blades for example. So they buy for maybe 500, and you only need 2 tempered blades and a few wood to craft this, which is worth about 10,000. So that's a really good trade-off. You can basically just buy up these few axes maybe, or wood if that settlement has wood, and you can just spam out these and sell them. But another thing which I notice always increases the value of an item is actually to have the highest tier possible you can craft. So if you wanted to be even smarter about this now, going back to the 200 blades, we're taking the same blade. We want to have a rank 4 or higher, even if we can afford it resource-wise. We want to have a rank 5. Now we don't have Damascus steels available because it's fairly rare, and we have a rank 4, 100, 200 handle. That's the highest tier 100, 200 handle I could find, and then we just go with fine steel here. And if we craft this one now with similar blade, just gonna double check the stats. Yeah, it's higher, so we would probably sell for higher. So if we're crafting this one now, we will see in the vendor that it sells for almost a double. But consider then that we did spend a few of the quite more expensive items. But it would be a good idea to sell this for 20,000, and you can buy like 4 of these, for example, or just any of these, cover that cost. We still get 10,000, and then you can smelt those down, and they are valued quite high. So you basically regain those materials quickly, because here you see we have fine steel again. If we smelt this, 2 fine steel, so that basically covers up the cost by far what we spent on even that more expensive item. And again, you gain double the amount of experience if you do smelt it down than you do if you just craft it and sell it. So it depends on what you want to do. Do you want to quickly level up, or do you want to make money? What I normally do in the beginning of a campaign where I don't have the troops travel around and such, I find a settlement which is good on hardwood, so I don't need to travel around to find more hardwood, and then I just start crafting, buying items from their trader, smelting it, crafting, and eventually you will level that blacksmithing up without even moving. So that's normally what I do when I start my campaign, is I start to build up my base economy around crafting by staying in one settlement, crafting a bit. Hopefully I can find a companion. I just pick up any companion at the start, because if you left click here, you can let your companions craft as well, so they can help you with the crafting process. So that's one thing. Now, part 2 of this video, and now I showed you some of the economic games. I want to show you one of the asked for recipes. I have been asked for both my two-handed axe recipes and my spear recipe. I'm gonna start with the spear recipe because that's a bit more complicated. A few gems and these things may change depending on what mods you're using and what patch version you're using. But a really good, if we go with the lower tier option here, a really good spearhead is either this one, which is rank 4, and of course if you research this, because what that does is it gives you a polearm which you can both thrust and swing with, at least if you have it in the two-hander. If you have it on one-handed, you can only thrust with it, but if you have it on two-handed, you can both thrust with it, thrust, pierce damage, and swing with it. And swinging actually helps if you're not that used to the game. It's easier to clip down horses and get strikes in if you're swinging compared to if you're stabbing. So this is a real nice game alongside with this one. There are other ones which are lower tier, I believe, which are swingable. This one, but it swings blunt and it doesn't give that much. So I'd go for trying to get as high as possible. So what I normally do is I craft up an item which is worth a lot, and then I buy spears for that item instead, and then I start smelting the spears, researching spear parts, and it goes fairly fast to research spear parts. So that's what I do. So that's one of the gems when it comes to spears. Another gem is if you look at the spear shaft and you go to rank 3 and you look at the short pine shaft, it makes any spearhead throwable while you're on foot. May I add that? It doesn't say here, but if you mount it, you can't throw this. So basically what you do is you press X, I think that's the default keybind, to switch between weapon options, and it turns into a throwing weapon in the middle of the fight. So this is a nice gem. So that basically makes it so that you can have a spear which is both thrusting, swinging, and throwable. And if you add here, even we can go with the lower tier ones, you add this, you add a knockdown effect as well. So thrust attacks can dismount riders. So basically, if you're having it as one-handed together with a shield, you can easily thrust it up against the rider, and that will knock the rider off, and then you can kill him after that. So this is a really good option if you want to support your troops, either in a shield wall or if you're riding around and you're jousting against your opponent. And hint will almost always guarantee him falling off his horse. So that's a good combination to aim for, and of course there's higher tiers of this as well, further increasing the chance of it. So yeah, that's about spears. There's another few gems, which is if we remove this, there's some shafts gives you the ability to couch it. That is when you're jousting, and some shafts like this one, tier 4 one, actually gives you the ability to both couch lance and spear brace. So, and you can make that on a cutting blade as well, like the fine steel metal did. No, wait, we couldn't spear brace, right? We couldn't spear brace that one. I didn't know, but this one you should be able to spear brace. So here we have a cutting blade. Here we're able to couch lance it. That is jousting on horseback. And we're able to spear brace it if we unequip the shield, and we use spear brace it against the horse, which is common if you want that function as well. There's another gem here. No, it's not throwable because this isn't throwable by default, this isn't throwable by default. But if you want a spear with couch and spear ability but also make it throwable, you can choose this one, the Northern Triangle Spear. That makes it throwable, but keep in mind now it's no longer cuttable, because last time we had a cuttable, throwable spear, we didn't use this shaft which made it couchable and spear braced. So check around on these stats. Spears are very diverse weapons. You can even make it, for example, one thing I like to do is to have this blade, any of these knockdown effects thingies, have it on a short pine shaft, which makes the swing speed fairly fast, but you can see that damage. Here you have a weapon which the swing speed is 75, but the cut damage is 182. With a knockdown effect if you choose to try and use it as a one-hander against the mount. So this is a really good option. It's even stronger than most axes. And speaking about axes, just a short intro on axes. I'm gonna show you some of the gems there as well, because people has been asking about those when I craft it. The one which generates most damage by far is this head, this shaft, and actually if you add a pommel to it. Let's see, the higher tier pommel and that makes it really high damage. I think if you pull down on this a bit, yeah, this is why you should always play around with the adjustments. We made it faster and still have the highest top tier damage. So this is a real good one. I personally don't use this, but this is a really decent speed and decent cut damage. But it's nothing compared to that spear I just showed you, because that had 75 swing speed and 182 cut damage. So depending on what tree you're gonna wanna go down when it comes to your abilities, if you wanna go down a tree where you're a two-handed warrior or a polearm damage warrior, you can still get a really high cutting damage weapon. Though keep in mind, two-handers are generally better against shields and infantry, while polearms are more focused on doing extra damage on horses. So depending on which you want to go for, yeah, it's all about preference, I guess. So yeah, that's the short end of that. I'm gonna show you a quick recipe returning to the two-handed axes. I showed you the high damage one. This head is one of the fastest one if you prefer to have a fast axe instead. And generally shorter shafts increases the speed, even the shorter one increases it further, but then you lose a lot of reach and you do want some reach. Generally when I try and level 200 up, if I'm not going for a specific theme on my character, that I want him to be a nasty berserker, or I want him to be a valiant knight with a big sword. Generally what I do to increase the level up efficiency is I do tend to aim for a faster swing speed. Especially when you're lower level, a faster swing speed will help you in combat, because at least you get those hits in and interrupt your enemy a bit, instead of having a weapon which swings really slow but might one-shot your opponent. Risk is it's gonna counter you before you get that hit in. So what I normally do is I go for a lower reach, higher speed weapon, especially when it comes to axes, but with still decent damage. So that's a quick information video about the gems I use when it comes to crafting weapons. As you noticed, I am a nerd when it comes to axes and spears. I'm not gonna go into all the weapons. I can quickly go over their specialities. Daggers are good for civilian combat. Again, if you're low level and want a high speed weapon, daggers are the fastest. Javelins are good for if you like that throwing things. Axes I wouldn't recommend. They are cool, but spears do more damage. Throwing spears, javelins. Same thing with throwing knives. Bonus with throwing knives is you can use them in a civilian setting if you want, but I haven't really found a big use for them. There's some perks which increase the shield damage by throwing axes against shield, but I still think that javelins are better. One-handed axe, one-handed sword, depending on what you want to do. One-handed axes are stronger against shields. One-handed swords are generally faster and good against less armored opponents. Maces are really good against heavily armored opponents, or if you want to be a slave trader. Same thing goes for two-handed maces. It's good for if you want to be a slave trader and capture a lot of prisoners when you fight, because you generally just injure them instead of killing them due to the blunt damage. Pikes, don't ask me. You can see I haven't even really researched it. I don't really know the difference between a polearm and a pike. It's somewhere there in the back of my head. I think pikes are a bit longer and more effective against cavalry. Polearms are a bit more diverse and have more options. Two-handed axes compared to maces compared to two-handed swords. Two-handed axes do shield damage and are effective against both armored and lightly armored opponents. Two-handed maces are basically really good. They have a knockdown effect, which you can perk up even further if you have it. So it increases the chance of knocking down your opponent, and again, it makes you capture more prisoners because you knock people out instead of killing them. Two-handed swords, they're really good. You can make them one-handed and two-handed, so you can use them both with a shield and two-handed. and they are real effective against low armored opponents, but against armor they do suffer a bit. No additional effects such as knockdowns, only two-handed maces knockdowns when it comes to these pure two-handed weapons. Polearms can have knockdowns against riders if you thrust them, as I showed you earlier in the video. So that's basically it. I hope this helps a bit. I know people has been asking for it. I hope it didn't become too long for you guys. You could find the part in the episode which you were asking about. Again, ask more if something was clear in this episode. I don't mind making shorter videos to just clarify something. I'm a fairly poor writer, so what I normally do when I get a question which is lengthy, I try to make a video of it instead. So any questions, put it in the comments. I don't mind making another video to clear anything here up. And as I said, these values may change from patches to patch, and also depending on what mods you use. So you need to elaborate a little bit yourself to find the optimal weapon for your character and your playstyle. But thanks for watching, guys. The music in the background is Danheim, and if we zoom out here, gonna leave the settlement as well. If we zoom out here after this save, the mods I'm using for this campaign, which you're actually getting a future glimpse of right now because I haven't uploaded all episodes, is the Calradia expanded map. It does cover lots of parts of Calradia, a lot bigger than the vanilla, and it adds 15 kingdoms total, custom troop trees, a few new weapons, and as well a bit of sea travel on the big lakes here. So it's a mod I really recommend. I also use Banner Kings and realistic battle mode, but not to armor component. Unfortunately, I don't find it realistic. Take care, guys. I see you on the campaign videos, which are more storyline driven, and I hope you all have a good day.